Welcome to Startup Circle. I'm Varsha Meghani. In the recent past, several startups, including Byju's, Unacademy, Topper, and Vedantu, have started offering coding classes. Byju's even paid $300 million to acquire coding company White Hat Junior. The government also, in its new education policy, announced that coding classes would be introduced from class 6 onwards. But amidst all of this frenzy, one startup, a Bangalore-based NGO, has been plugging away at the space since 2016. We caught up with the co-founder and CEO of Navgurukul, Abhishek Gupta, to find out how he's transforming the lives of low-income youth through coding. Take a look. Abhishek, thanks for joining us. So you graduated from IIT Delhi. You launched two other startups before founding Navgurukul. Tell us about your journey and what led to the idea of Navgurukul.
So when I finished my basically graduation, and within 6 months, my first startup was acquired, and that gave me some kind of confidence, feeling that okay, I had accomplished something that I wanted to, and also it gave me some sort of financial liquidity to think about what do I want to do next. So I started questioning my relationship with money. And what I realized was at that moment, money was not an important part of my life. I really wanted to be just happy. And by that time, I was working on my second startup. We have raised about 18 crores to build a social network using videos. But slowly and slowly, I started realizing that my interest lies in basically working on impact. And at one point, I decided to quit my organization and start working with Delhi government. And when I was working with Delhi government, I think it was a very eye-opening kind of experience, just given the scale at which they operate, kind of problems that they're trying to solve. At the same time, I felt like the kind of creative energies or the kind of ideas that I want to put into life, they are not easy to be put into a government system. That the role of the government is to scale up what we have built with love. But if you want to really build something from scratch, experiment and innovate, um, maybe it's better to do it through a separate organization. Time when I started meeting people, especially the students from the government schools, I realized they didn't know what to do after the school. So the question that came to us was, can we have a 1 year residential course where they learn programming and necessarily or a guaranteed job is basically waiting for them? And that's what led birth to Navgurukul.
Abhishek, coding has suddenly become very popular with Unacademy, Vedantu, Byju's, etc., launching courses in coding. But when you guys started out in 2016, how difficult was it, to draw in students at the time?
When we started, we started with a residential batch and we did not have any success stories, etc. So we didn't just face problems because we were teaching coding, but we were also facing problems because there was no reputation to start with. So when we started our first batch with 10 male students, in fact, their parents would come and ask us, make sure that you'll not sell their kidneys or you'll not do that, etc., etc. Um, and and we couldn't even think of starting a girls batch when we started, to be honest, because it was too big a thing for parents. But fortunately, we kept on building a reputation. Now we are mostly working with girls, and imagine a parent sending their daughter from rural parts of Bihar to Bangalore. For them, it's almost like 3 days travel. When a parent is sending their daughter to a place like that, it's a very very big deal. Now, fortunately, we have reputation, we have success stories, we have people, alumni who can talk about how they did it. So it's easier for the new students to feel comfortable coming with us. Also, as you mentioned, because of coding becoming a more mainstream thing, now parents have themselves started asking, "ये coding होता क्या है?" पहले क्या होता था? We used to go and tell them we are teaching coding, and they're like, "There's nothing called coding. Maybe you're scamming us."
Tell us about one such success story that has stayed with you.
There have been many students, in fact, 100 plus students who have gotten jobs through Navgurukul right now. And almost all of them come from very inspiring backgrounds. For example, Kajal, she came from Delhi. Her father is a rickshaw puller. And she joined us when she was 17. And within 6 months of her course, she got a job at Mindtree. And now it's been almost a year that she's working. Since our focus is on women, it's not just economic upliftment, it's also a kind of bargain that they get at their houses now because they're the economical centers. So this economical path leads to a very direct social upliftment for the students that we're working with.
Abhishek, walk us through the enrollment process and what a student gets over the 1 year program.
We have a very strong emphasis on the diversity. So the students who are coming to join our residential centers, they're essentially coming from all over the India. We have students from almost 15 different states coming in our campus in Bangalore, Karnataka. And I think that has been made possible because we have partners throughout the country. And these partners not just help us to identify students from different geographies, but also from different vulnerable sections. For example, students who might have HIV positive or who are into abusive marriages. Then for the student, they have to go through a simple maths and English based test. While our job is to like remove the barriers that exist for them to get what they want. But unfortunately, because of the extreme lack of exposure to maths makes it very hard for us to take in any and every person. So we have created our own barriers by these English and mathematics tests, which the students have to clear before they join us. But also, interestingly, we have created our own online program with the students who were not able to qualify into our 1-year residential course. They essentially can go through that online program until they can clear our residential courses test.
And then you also help students land jobs at various companies, and you don't take a tuition fee upfront. You then encourage them to pay a portion of their income, once they get a job. So number one, how many students end up getting a job, once they graduate from Navgurukul, and what percentage of those end up paying you back, since that is also a voluntary thing that you've made?
Our entire program is basically hinging on the fact that we guarantee them a job. So the idea is very simple that instead of thinking how many students get a job, we ask a different question. We ask how much time does it take for a student to get a job? There would be students who would take 6 months, there would be students who would take 8 months, there will be students who will take 1 year. But as a matter of principle, once we have taken in a student, we do not let them go until they get a job. So practically our placements rate are 100% for all the students who continue. There are some students who drop out in the process, especially for the girls. There have been cases where the girls were asked to come to home on different pretexts and ultimately they were married. In terms of pay forward model, the idea is very simple. We want this program to be financially sustainable so that we don't have to go to a donor every time to ask money. And also it's an expensive program to some extent because we spend about more than ₹1,00,000 per student to make sure that we are able to provide them food, accommodation, laptops, internet, and all the facilities that are needed to learn. Around 70 to 80% of our students actually pay forward for the education for the next student. At the same time, to encourage them further, we have created a strong alumni support program, which is available more exclusively to people who are paying forward. So that, for example, include us trying to identify higher opportunities for them. Let's say getting a job into Google or Microsoft. So this way, it's not just that they are voluntarily paying. It's also a system where we make it a point to continue to support them.
And how many students, do you have presently?
The third batch that we have right now, we have about 150 students. And at the same time, we are adding about 360 more seats for which we have already received the funding. But we are just waiting for the Corona things to because we have to open our own campus, we have to do all the operations. So we're just waiting for some more clarity because we wanted to open the campus in Pune, and Pune unfortunately is in the major hotspots in Corona. But hopefully, by the end of this year, we will have at least 500 capacity in our campuses to teach programming. And beyond that, we're already teaching programming online to about more than 1,000 girls.
And what percentage of your students are girls?
So right now we have about, I think somewhere around 75%.
Okay.
And we plan to probably reach to around 80 to 90%.
So then you're not just solving the problem of a lack of access to education, but you're also solving the problem of representation.
In fact, to be honest, we do not care about education. The only problem we care about is representation, as you rightly mentioned. And representation has many layers to it. Let's say if you want to have a discussion around migrant worker situation, how are you going to do that? How are you going to ensure representation? Because in that case, almost each and every person who's going to represent their issues are going to be people like you and me. So gender is one area of representation or one dimension of representation, which we are talking about, which is very important to solve. And I really believe in that conversation. But at the same time, the problem that Navgurukul is trying to solve is to work on representation at many different levels. So for example, migrant workers, like how do we ensure that the students from migrant workers are essentially working with us? HIV positive students who have been abused in their marriages, right? So all of these areas are very critical to us. In fact, one of the recent work that we've started doing is to collaborate with State Commission for Women and Child Welfare Departments. so that we can directly work with women who have been abused, and instead of them going to shelter homes, they can come to our centers and be there.
The NGO model that you just touched upon, uh, how self-sustaining is that? Or will you be looking to kind of tweak your model going forward in order to be less reliant on donors?
Any coding bootcamp essentially does not solve the problem that we are solving, right? Largely because, for example, the girls we are working with, they cannot even study online. They do not have laptops. They do not have internet. They do not even have a safe working environment in their home to learn for 8 hours a day.
Right.
So the work is very, very different in terms of the kind of people we are targeting. That is number one. The number two thing is we really believe that education has to be made available as cheap as possible. So our focus is not really to make profits. Byju's, White Hats, and all these places we talked about. Unfortunately, their selling strategy is way too aggressive, and there is a lot of critique around how they're misleading people by telling people that your children showing ads with Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and telling them you should code so that you become like that at the age of 7 or 8, right? So I personally, I strongly feel against the commoditization of something as important as education. I see education as something which is supposed to create a leveling field for people. At the same time, with our pay forward model, we are working towards making sure that the program is financially sustainable. So instead of saying we want to achieve 5x profits or 3x profits, we want it to be in a way such that we require money from outside to expand. But once we have taken that money, to be able to sustain that, we should be able to do with our students. One of the things that I would like people to think about, especially when we talk about these models, is to really understand that the person who needs most help would require more resources to reach somewhere. So let's say if you want to work with students who have been human trafficked. So at the age of, let's say, 13, the girl was picked up, and now you have rescued her. And she's, let's say, and now she needs help. Now she needs to become something. How do you imagine a Baiju or a White Hat or a Masai or anyone to be able to reach out to these students, right? What you need is a very strong intervention to make sure the lack of education is essentially made up. There's a strong work on mental health of the student, and essentially the student feel confident and integrated in the mainstream environments.
And then it kind of expands beyond teaching pure coding, but it becomes a more holistic program.
Absolutely. In fact, we feel that software engineering is its own kind of bubble. I talk to people who are software engineers and they feel like app bana doge sab solve ho jayega. I'm not saying tech is not effective. Tech is super effective. But the kind of context India has, tech is not answer to each and every problem. That's why we need people who understand the limitations of technology, who understands the context of the problems. And that is where we feel that our program is not just to build people who know technology, but to people who can ultimately bring change because they're coming from that context. So for example, one of our students, they started exploring about teaching people in the community. And mostly we teach them maths, we teach them English. And these girls, they taught the 13-year-olds, the children, to just remember their address of their homes. And they didn't even have to work very hard to understand why that is important. They come from that context. They have heard stories of someone getting lost and never being able to return home. It's an opportunity and honor for us to work with that, with students who understand that context and work with them on how they can potentially think about solving some of these problems.
Avijay, finally, what plans going forward? I know you have the Pune campus in the works. But will you also look to expanding into other subject areas aside from coding?
We have already started a pilot of graphic design. We are almost close to finalizing a pilot on course on social sector development. Largely, our thesis is very simple. We believe that any higher education course can be challenged. We just need to figure out how exactly we are going to do that. Most of the work in the NGO sector has been around skilling. Our focus is higher education. So we are also planning to launch an initiative where we encourage people to use our infrastructure, to work with our students, to use our funds to create and open source their own higher education models. And in fact, the social sector development course that I'm talking about, the course is essentially being led by someone else in a very similar model where we are providing all the operational infrastructure, etc. I mean, that organization takes care of the building of the program because they have that expertise. The second important work for us is to build an open source collective, which we call Meraki. The idea of this open source collective is to build a mobile application using which the students can learn programming from their mobile devices, from their smartphones, from wherever they are, with minimal internet and lowest possible phone configuration. And it's an open source collective. So we are encouraging all the major NGOs to join us so that instead of making 100 different applications and fragmenting the quality, The idea is to come together and come up with one product that there's a certain confidence on, and use it to deliver coding and programming skills to one and everyone.